Welcome back to TEYARA SMP, a TNP Limitless 7 series, and we are back over here by the new tree farm, and I've added a couple of things, as you can see. They are some, what are they called? Absorption Hoppers? Hold on, let me just see this real quick. They are Absorption Hoppers, yes, from the Mob Grinding Utils mod, and they've all been upgraded with absorption radius upgrades. And if we just quickly show the area, you can see that it overlaps a significant portion of the tree farm, as well as a little bit of the area around it. And I think I might tighten this up a little bit. Potentially, I haven't decided, made up my mind just yet, but when I logged back onto the server just to start planning what I was going to do this week, I came over to the tree farm, and the thing is, this tree farm, the create part, works just a little too good. And when I came here, there were a couple of things that I noticed. One is that there were a ton of bees. Just a ton of bees. And that actually makes me think that I want to check the storage to see if any of the hives ended up in there for some reason. But when you leave this thing chunk loaded, what happens is, if there are any flowers in the surrounding chunks, like even if they're not theoretically supposed to be loaded, the game takes stock of that. And so what happened was, I had some flowers, like, just a few blocks away, like just in this chunk right here, and even though it wasn't loaded, bees were spawning, or bees' nests were generating when the trees would grow up, and then the nests would go away, but the bees would remain, because only these 3 chunks were loaded, and so the bees didn't really get the opportunity to do any sort of chunk drift. So you can imagine that when I came over to this massive cloud of bees, part of me was thinking, oh my, how can I put all of these into hives? And the other part of me was going, oh no, this is going to be a performance nightmare on the server, what do I do? And so I started trying to remove all of the flowers from the surrounding chunks, just the immediate ones just around the trees. And unfortunately, while I was doing that, I accidentally punched a bee. And you know what that means? The entire swarm got angry at me and started to come at me. And the thing is, if I were playing vanilla, that would have killed me. That absolutely would have ended my play right there. I mean, it's not like we're on permadeath or anything like that, but I would have had a very embarrassing death because 30 or 40 angry bees came after me all at once. However, with all of the regeneration and armor that I have, I legitimately did not lose any health. It was just very uncomfortable, and a lot of bees died by stinging me. So we still need to figure that out. I still don't know why they are spawning. It's entirely possible that it's treating the barley as flowers, so I may need to come out like even wider with this stuff and just get rid of every single possible flower just like within like a few chunk radius, especially while I'm standing here. So that's one thing that we may still need to do. But then, after the bee incident happened, we had, let me just hide the area real quick, we had a whole bunch of items just floating on the ground, because like I said, the tree farm is a little too good. And the problem is, it's like very effective at growing a whole bunch of trees and harvesting them real fast, but the thing is, when certain things break out of order, I think the leaves like drop stuff on top of the tree farm itself, and they eventually just end up on the ground because they're outside of the pickup radius kind of thing. And so I decided that, yes, that's also going to be a performance issue, because we had stacks upon stacks of saplings and sticks and twigs and apples just on the ground. And so rather than just leaving them there to theoretically despawn after 5 minutes, which they evidently weren't doing in the loaded chunks, I'm guessing because they fell into the unloaded chunks and they just stayed there unloaded the whole time. So I figured we'd just put in these absorption hoppers, and then that way when stuff does fall out, we can catch them. And actually, come to think of it, what I want to do is I want to go into the claim manager, and we want to claim the surrounding chunks here, and I guess also load them. And so what that'll do is when we're offline and not just standing here, it will pick everything up. So, tree upgrades aside, we are over here at the new project, which I came up with while thinking about potentially working on some of the building stuff over there. I realized that I am going to eventually need more clay for the wattle and daub blocks, among other things that I tend to work on the server. So, right now I've just been going further and further abroad to get clay out of rivers and the like, and that's just way too time consuming. So this week we're going to be focusing on potentially a clay and terracotta machine. Now right here we've got just a basic windmill set up. This is going to be disguised eventually as part of the building, but we'll get there when we get there. Aesthetic comes after the functionality, especially because part of the disguise will require the clay that I need to make with this machine. And I gotta sleep. Why do I always gotta sleep? Why does the clip always happen when I have to sleep? That kind of sucks. So now that we slept, I did a little bit of pre-planning, so we are going to drop some of the terrain down just a little bit so that we've got more space to work with. I don't know if we still have enough space, but we're certainly going to try. So what we're going to do first is we have 4 gearboxes that are going to come in here. And this sticks out a little bit. Actually, no, not gearboxes. We want clutch. We want clutch in the correct place, please. And eventually this will be hooked up to a stockpile switch that we haven't added in just yet, but we're going to. So I put in the 4th one here, and then we're going to put in some drills on this side. And then under those drills, or not quite under those drills, but nearish those drills, we are going to put... Let me think about this. So, actually, I probably want to put it here. Yeah. I want to put it here, but facing the other way. So let's just ramp around real quick. This is actually on the level where I want the drawer to be. So we need to come out like that, all the way to there, and now the drawer is in the correct position, for which we can put these high throughput hoppers. And so what I'm planning on doing is we will waterlog these drills, and then above this empty space above the hoppers, we're going to put in some lava. I haven't figured out what containment system I'm going to use for that just yet, but what that'll do is make a steady stream of cobblestone. Now, these are set to 48 RPMs. I think the highest we can still go is 60. I don't know if that's true because the high throughput hoppers or, you know, Minecraft mechanics where things will start to spit out if create goes too quickly, but right now we are at 48. Eventually when we have more SU, we might speed that up to 60, but the whole system has been calibrated almost perfectly for the amount of stress units that we have and the parts that are going into it. So now that we have that clutch, we have the storage, we are going to put a threshold switch in behind it, and this is the equivalent of the stockpile switch in earlier versions of Create. You can see that all we have to do is set our thresholds for when we want the system to turn off versus on. And basically, I think what we want to do is crank this all the way up to 100 so that when this thing is not full, we turn the drills back on. But when this thing is below 25%, we kick on the system and start it running again. So that is going to be where our cobblestone ends up. I kind of wish I'd brought some levers just as a placeholder, but it's okay if this keeps spinning while we're working on it. We kind of need it as a visualizer. Then what we're going to do is we are going to put in a smart chute here, and I think we're also going to set it to stacks of 64 so that way we can build up a consistent amount of sand. That's what's going to happen here. So what we need to do now is this is where we're going to put in our cutting wheels, and I absolutely do not want to use the Ultimine right there. That would be terrible for my inventory. But let's pick up a few more of these grass blocks just to get them out of the way. And now that we've cleaned that up a little bit, the floor is going to be made of something entirely different. But what we want What we want is not that orientation. I don't know why it picked that orientation, but we want to flip it here on this side. Can you not do that? Can crushing wheels not be placed sideways anymore? If that is true, that's an absolute tragedy. Tragedy or travesty? Travesty, yes. That's the word I prefer. So let's try that. Let's try putting this on there. That does work. And the thing is, this appears to be crushing the wrong way. Either that or this is perfectly fine and I just haven't realized it yet. Like, as long as the two wheels are spinning in the opposite directions, that should be fine, right? I think. And if I'm thinking about this correctly, having the double gearbox like this should make them spin opposite each other too. I just have to get the input rotation correct. And for the most part, we're just doing this to visualize the whole setup. So what's going to happen here is I'm in the wrong spot. That's what's going to happen here. I actually need to be over here. Gearboxes, here we go. So I need to be over here. We put our vertical gearboxes in like that, put in our shaft like that, and then we need the crushing wheels. And what that'll do is the thing in between the wheels counts as an inventory for the purposes of chute interaction. So what'll happen is, if this is crushing, this will get backed up and not extract any more cobblestone. So that is good. And then we need to assume that we're rotating this way. Let me just think about this real quick. I think I might potentially just put our drawer here for the sand. And let's just take a look at how centered we are under this windmill. Yeah, that's kind of whatever. Yeah, that's kind of whatever. So theoretically, the next thing that we can do is we can take rotation out of here, and then we'll have to branch it off around here using another clutch and probably another gearbox or something like that. And so then we will take another stockpile switch or threshold switch out the back here, and that will measure how much sand we have. And then I almost want to turn the corner. I think I probably should turn the corner, yeah. So maybe what we'll do is we'll actually let the thing extend out to here where we can extract from, and then we'll have another belt in this direction here. And then I think we'll probably need a vertical gearbox here and here, so that we can get the crushing wheels in here. And we're a little outside where I expected the floor plan to be. Maybe. Maybe we're fine. Worst case scenario, that just means that our shop is gonna bulge just a little bit more at the bottom, but I think this will be okay, probably. So we're gonna make that curve, and then we're going to put in the other two wheels. Here. I don't want you like that. I want you rotated like that so that you don't connect up to this shaft. We are going to have to do some kind of power transmission shenanigans. Possibly... Oh. No, yeah. What we can do is we can just use... where are my shafts? We can just use an output here, so that way whatever we're using to power this crushing wheel is actually also our input for this gearbox, which should, if I've done everything correctly, theoretically turn this in the correct direction too that it needs to be spinning. Yes. And I may need to throw in like some chain drives or gear shifts, and that should theoretically reverse everything. So I need to make another gearbox. We'll do that, and I'll come back to planning. Yeah, the thing is, I had intended for so much more of this to be on the same level. I could potentially put in a shaft here instead. We'll do the double gearbox thing, just raise the crushers up one level. I think I want to do that. So let's replan this a little bit. Okay, and with a little more terrain out of the way, you can see that now we are going to have... We're going to put water probably on this side and on this side, just because it's further in, quote-unquote. Let me just go ahead and throw out some stuff that I know that I've definitely got a ton of, which is to say all of these seeds, I should have just a whole bunch of them. We definitely have rice grains. I'm going to keep the wasabi, just in case I don't have that, but I'm pretty sure I recognize cucumber and rice. So we'll do that. We'll put some of this stuff in the backpack. Where are my fans? So, we're going to have one set of fans here. I think... Perfect. And we're going to do that. And the hard thing is really going to be wiring this stuff up. So we're going to have that like that. We are going to need to drop into the spot underneath the depot where we should have probably... no, we are going to need another smart chute. So I don't know why I only made one of those. That was a bit of a massive failure in terms of foresight, but let us go ahead and put in the spruce drawer here. And this is going to be really weird. Like, I have a feeling that we're going to just have, like, a very uneven floor. It's going to be very wonky. This is supposed to be in a giant pot, so I suppose we could even make it part of the charm that it's, like, a little bit misshapen. You know, like, how first-time potters don't have steady hands, and they make things just all sort of wonky and uneven. So we can just say that that's what's happened at the bottom of this jar. But the problem is, I need to, like, find another good place to then cook the terracotta, which we could just run over to the forge for, but I want this to be, like, its own standalone pottery place, and also, as part of the calculations, I figured out the precise speed that everything has to be running at, so I would prefer not to have to go to a separate place and mess up my calculations even more, but I would be willing to do that in the odd event that it helps things. And the question is, do I really think that it makes sense to put a kiln inside of a clay pot? And the answer is, yeah, why not? It's my own world. Yes, so I'm still probably going to do that. I just have to figure out how I'm going to lay this out. So, underneath all this, we're going to need an output. And we're also going to need to put the stockpile switch for this one here. I have clearly been forgetting to place down the threshold switches on some of the other ones, so let me just go ahead and do that as well. So threshold switch here, threshold switch here, and a lot of this stuff is going to require back propagation. That's going to be really annoying, especially because, okay, I could put something here. But like I said, some of this gear work is going to be really messy. Yeah, this is gonna get real messy real fast, because I'm gonna have to power this, which means that the area that we want to come down into is gonna be covered up by this. So I might even potentially just stick to 2 fans and just totally, like, mess with my calculation. There is a reason that I have a second rotation speed controller after all, so I could potentially make the fans a little bit faster, I guess? Maybe? And that would also reduce my footprint. Kind of. I mean, it's already fairly massive, I guess. I'm now also considering which way do I want my fans oriented, because another thing that I could totally do is I could totally take this one here and point it in like that, and just have these spin the opposite directions, so that this one pushes, this one pulls, and we have our block of water right here. And so that'll reduce the footprint a little bit. It is going to make the direction or powering this a little bit harder, but I think I can do that with like a gearbox here and maybe like a chain gear shaft along the side or something like that, and then another gearbox here, and then theoretically they're all turning the same direction. Maybe I need to think that through a little bit more, but that's fine. So then this is going to come out to here, or it doesn't even need to go out that far. I suppose I could... I should work my way around the corner. And just to make things interesting, we'll come to here, I think. And then once we're here, we'll have two shafts like that. We actually need to go one level down if we're doing that sort of a thing. So we'll have two shafts like that, and then we'll have a third one here, and then we'll come up one... Oop. We'll come up diagonally to there, I think? Is that in the ground? No, it's not, but this is fine, because that's then going to be on the same level that we could use a funnel to input into our basin, I mean not basin, depot right here. And then we can also have another smart chute come out the bottom, which is what we intend. And then, so that'll be, the smart chute is on this level, which means that we want the... Hold on, let me think about this further, just a little bit further. So we've got our basin here, we've got our smart chute here. Does that line up with reality? This is a little higher up, because the stockpile is in a different place. The stockpile for the next section is here. And very crucially, very, very crucially, so this is where we're going to get clay. We don't want that. We want this simple compacting drawer. And we're probably going to have to filter on the item that we are monitoring, maybe? Either that or it'll be fine if it's just stuck at 100. So then what we want to do is we want to be able to output either item depending upon what we want to smelt. And because that's actually more compact, or because we need more compactness than I had thought, let me just think this through a little bit. Is there any way that I can do this more nicely? I could take the threshold switch, and instead of putting it out the back, we put it out the side, away from our outputs. There we go. And so that way we can have a funnel out one side for, you know, stacks of the clay blocks, and then another output for the regular orbs. That would make sense. And so I'm gonna just have to do... I guess I could use a tunnel right here. So if I put something like that, and we'll just have that go out like that, we are going to need enough shafts. Where is my wrench? So we'll do shaft like that, shaft like that, shaft like this, which will then connect up to a belt that is also here. But then on this, this layer, we're going to have a tunnel, which is going to merge the items back into one workflow, which is going to be here. And I guess we'll just rotate this like that. So you can kind of see that we'll have everything flow over here, we'll have it all flow over here, and then I need to decide which level the next thing is going to go on. Because if I put that there, and I put a funnel here, then the depot... Oh, yeah, no. I am thinking about this correctly. It's just this extra layer of silt that's messing me up. Yes, so we'll put the depot on this layer here, which is our ground floor, at least currently. So if the depot is here, we'll have our smart chute here, which means the spruce, not the spruce. We actually need to make a 1x2 drawer to go in this section. And then I guess we're going to need to modify the circuitry that I have in mind such that either signal from a stockpile switch will unlock here too. And that's kind of interesting. So I'm going to have to think that out just a little bit more. I'm going to put together some more of the items that we're going to need, and we'll pop in here after I've done just a little bit more work on this system and possibly even gotten it going, and then just hop straight to the explanation. Yeah, that sounds good. And also I think I need a break right now. Okay, so while I was offline, or rather while I was doing things without recording, I finished out all of the mechanisms here and hooking everything up to the rotation, so let's just do a quick walkthrough and explain things. And I've also made a whole bunch of storage upgrades because it's going to be cooler when we get to the end and I can show you how this thing actually works. So let us start up here. Naturally, we have a cobblestone generator in here. So we have waterlogged mechanical drills, and then above that is just a whole bunch of lava. I switched to the framed trapdoors because those look like they caught on fire just a little bit less frequently than the spruce trapdoors that I had been using. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm pretty sure spruce trapdoors are inflammable, they can't burn, because flammable and flammable mean the same thing. But the point is, I don't think spruce trapdoors can actually burn, they just catch on fire for some reason. But these framed blocks, framed trapdoors, which I've set to the andesite casing, those do not burn. So we have our lava source, we have our waterlogged drills, that makes stone and cobblestone. Actually, it looks like it just makes stone, maybe? I'm not sure. But the point is, that drops down into these high throughput hoppers for the most part. We have actually had some escaping, probably because these trapdoors are kind of thin, and also, you know, just natural Minecraft mechanics sometimes lends themselves to bubbling items up through a solid block that spawns on top of them kind of deal. So, in order to deal with that, we've put in another absorption hopper, which, because it's pointed directly into this drawer for the cobblestone, it acts like a filter, and any other item that isn't cobblestone just stays in the hopper. And so far that hasn't really been necessary, or rather it hasn't caught anything else except for construction components that I'm already done with kind of thing. But that's been really helpful. It means that we're not losing any cobblestone to being spat out of the system, and that means that this is going to operate just a little bit faster. It's not all that fast because of our stress unit capacity, but we're planning on filling this out with a whole bunch more wool. So theoretically, once I've done that, it'll be spinning a little bit faster and have more stress units. I mean, we have the rotation speed controller set to 56 currently anyway, so it's not like we need this to be spinning faster, we just need the stress units. I digress. Let us continue through our little walkthrough, and then I'll explain all of the redstone on the way back, because we sort of have a forward production, but backward signaling, and that's kind of nice. So once we move into the spruce drawer, we come out the other side, follow this belt into the crushing wheels. Those crushing wheels, of course, make gravel, which we spit out over here into some more crushing wheels, which spits out three things from the gravel phase. Flint, naturally, I should say, sand, and clay. I was astonished that it spits out clay, but that's a good thing. So, unfortunately, what that also means is, if I wanted this clay to get into this part of the system, we had to set up a filter which permits both sand and clay. So we've got everything that outputs stuff is set to 64 just because I like staying at the multiple of 64. And so that means that eventually, when we get to 64 clay, it'll get spat out into this depot and then just immediately go into the compacting drawer we have below. But from this drawer, we also spit out sand. And unfortunately, originally in the last take, you may have noticed that I've got fans pointed into the depot on this side as well. And what I'd intended was this one as a pusher fan and this one as a puller fan. except that doesn't work the way that I've got it set up. Like, the depot counts as a physical block, I think, for the purposes of airflow, so the air coming across here counts just fine for the washing, but on this side, you can't pull through a depot, so I wasn't actually speeding up the process at all, and I determined this experimentally using this depot over here with the lava cooking, but that also applies over here. So we reduced the design down to one encased fan over here, and then we just have our water in here, and so we're washing the sand, and then the smart chute picks out specifically the clay. So we pop down here. Here we have two outputs because it's a compacting drawer, and also because if you cook clay ball, they get turned into bricks, whereas if you cook clay block, they get turned into terracotta. So there's a reason that we want to be storing both of these things, or rather outputting both of these things. And so the way the system is designed is that here we output our clay balls, and you can see we've got a redstone link hooked up to that, more in a little bit. And I might also possibly have to do some redstone on screen, but then out the back, we are also outputting stacks of the clay blocks. Now, when I initially turned this thing on, of course, I did not have enough clay in the system to even have 64 of the clay blocks, so originally it was just spitting out bricks. But then, and we're getting to the signaling part at some point in time, once the bricks were full up, I still had the void upgrade. So what that meant was we just kept generating bricks and, well, immediately losing them because we're already capped out. Anyway, so if this were on, and we're going to demonstrate this when we get to the signaling portion, clay and clay blocks would come up into this depot here, and then get cooked by this fan. However, because of the signaling systems that I mentioned, everything is currently off. Well, not everything. Okay, just the bottom portion is off, because everything else is starting to stockpile. Now watch what happens. We are just going to go ahead and add a whole bunch of storage upgrades to this one in particular. Now nothing is happening, because that's not at all close to storage. And I'm just going to do that up here as well. Let me just make sure that... Okay, that is full up. I think eventually we might put a void upgrade in there too, but it's not entirely necessary compared to these ones that have extra byproducts. But we're just going to increase the storage of that, increase the storage of this, and then finally, when I increase the storage here, we should trip back past our thresholds that we've set, and let's just look at this again. So I found out that with a 2-drawer thingy thing, that 33% is roughly the threshold that you want for a given slot to be full. So that's what we're currently set at. But the thing is, we have this slot here, and if we look in here, I think these count as additional storage slots as well. So I think that may be messing with the percentage. We may need to dial this in a little bit, at least for this drawer and that drawer over there, and possibly that one as well. But let's go ahead and put in some storage upgrades, and now, yes, the system has kicked back on. Oh, okay, and this is something that I wasn't entirely expecting. So both of these signals have now just turned off. Let me go ahead and sleep real quick. The signals for both clay ball and clay block have turned off because we have two separate signals here. So we've got a threshold switch for bricks, and we also have a threshold switch for terracotta. And they're both currently set to 33, just because that's, well, the quantity that we would expect for both of them. But since we just added a massive amount of storage to the drawers, we are now well below the threshold, and both of those have turned off. Now, we have this AND gate specifically for this conveyor belt, and let me see where the clutch is for that. So the clutch for that is in the back, actually. I think this is it here. And so when either of those items is above the threshold, it will turn on its own side, but it won't turn off the machine in general. That is to say, we're going to keep cooking terracotta and bricks as long as we can, or as long as one or the other is empty. And that's what the AND gate does for us. And then when both of them are full up, as we saw before, the AND gate will be on, which turns off this this clutch, which turns off this whole bottom part of the system. So that means that both our fan turns off, which means nothing else gets cooked, and then also the conveyor belt gets turned off. But because of how I've set this up, each threshold switch also governs the specific output from the compacting drawer, which means that if one of these fills up faster than the other, and we will definitely be expecting the clay balls, or the bricks that is, to fill up faster than the other, then this is going to turn on first, because we're never going to get to 64 without some serious speed enhancements to the cobblestone generator that we're not going to be doing in the overworld. So we're never going to expect clay blocks out of the system until we are full up on bricks, at least in most cases. In this case, everything sort of got spat out at the same time because both sides of the system were trying to output simultaneously. And so that's why you see just sort of a mix of balls and blocks. Moving right on up, we also have a stockpile switch specifically tied to the clay part of the system. Let me just double check what the threshold is here. I wasn't entirely sure what this is going to be, given that this is a compacting drawer and it handles inventory differently than the rest of the drawers. So in several weeks potentially when this fills back up, because I have expanded the capacity beyond what I can possibly use in the series, I think. So when I come back and this is a lot more full, theoretically, then we can dial in what this upper bound is supposed to be at and then kick it back into the other lane so that this part of the system shuts off, and then we can start stockpiling sand, which is a stockpile switch out the back. Let me make sure this is also, yes, it is also on sand. We can see out the bottom there. So we have another redstone link attached to the clutch over here, which will shut off the sand grinding part of the system. And then we have a stockpile switch hooked up to the gravel. You get the idea. We've got the gravel here. That hooks up to this clutch here on this side, and that shuts off that part of the system. I really need to do something about everything catching on fire because there's nothing actually flammable here. It just spontaneously ignites, and that's not great. And then last but not least, we of course have the threshold switch hooked up to the cobblestone, which I'm trying to remember where I routed this to. Maybe that clutch there? No, that's the other clutch. No. This one is just simply out the other side of the rotation speed controller. And just a brief note, whenever you're going to do multiple systems, it almost always helps to have a gearbox just to split off a shaft. In my Create Above and Beyond world, you may have watched that mini-series. I also used encased chain drives, just like this, to spit out rotational speed that I knew that I was going to have to redirect and put a clutch in between the main power of the system and the rest of the body. And because we've done it like this, we can shut off individual components, and possibly even if I really want to, I could put in some levers to manually disable generation of a specific part. But for now, we're just going to let this cook, and I'm going to see how much stockpile we get, well, eventually. Now this is actually after I've recorded the outro, but when I took a look at the storage drawers, I realized that the storage for some of them was a few 100 million blocks. And the thing is, I don't think I need that, at least especially not in the overworld, before I've gone and actually created my main base, which is like the biggest thing that I've been leading up to the entire series, and still probably won't get to this year, depending upon how I pace things. But the point is, I don't need hundreds of millions of bricks of terracotta in the overworld, no. So I went and I took out most of the storage upgrades. You can see I've got them in my hands. I've just got one diamond upgrade per drawer at this point in time, and that should more than do us for at least this early part of the series. And moreover, that still demonstrated the threshold switch action that I wanted to talk about earlier. And now we can skip to the outro. Now, I don't think we're going to complete this building in this episode because A, we want more terracotta to cook up, and B, well, I have a general idea of how I want this thing to look. I just want to get some of the shaping done before I start filling everything in, and so we're going to save that for next week. We're probably going to work on this building, as well as finally kind of finish off the main building over there, potentially even get it a little bit into the forge area, hopefully, maybe, theoretically. That's the plan at least. But that is going to do it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to like, subscribe, and click that bell to be notified. And as always, I'm looking forward to your feedback in the comments below. And with that, I will catch you on the flip side. Thanks for watching, everybody. In the upper left is the next video in the series, or a video you might like. In the lower left is the series playlist, and on the right is my icon by which you can subscribe. Thanks again for watching.